Hello, Tech Pros, episode 129.
You've got to be connected to the people that you're serving. And achieving any kind of long-term change really requires patience and discipline.
Welcome to the podcast where I chat with professionals who are getting the job done using technology 7 days a week. Each week, we start with Motivation Monday. Tuesday is about productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people and communication, Saturday, entrepreneurship, and Sunday, being unplugged. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Scott Jancy. Happy Wednesday, Scott.
Happy Wednesday, Chad. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Are you ready to lead us through this interview?
Yes, I am. I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Scott Jancy has worn several hats over the course of his career: historian, architect, naval officer, planner, and most recently as a consultant working globally on small and large-scale infrastructure development projects. He works closely with leadership teams to help them set vision and strategy, create new sources of value, and adapt to continuous change. Trained as a historian and as an architect, Scott has a background that gives him an understanding of how systems evolve and the role that design can play in affecting cultural, economic, and social change. A systems thinker, he views every organization from the perspective of a system in balance. So, Scott, when we're talking about systems, when we're talking about architecture, are we talking about like IT architecture, like plugging systems, like IT systems, software pieces together? Or are we talking about architecture meaning the physical buildings and roads and concrete and iron and all that kind of stuff?
Thank you, Chad. Actually, I'm referring to architecture as a way of thinking about the world. Architecture is a systems discipline, and I see architecture as a way of organizing people, places, and things to achieve some end. From my perspective, I stopped practicing just traditional architecture 10 to 12 years ago. I quit working in a firm, and I jumped into government consulting after a period of time in the Navy, and very quickly found that leading teams of people, whether it be in a home office or teams of people that are working abroad, when you start to think of those teams as an organism, and how do you set direction for those people to complete a project? For me, it starts with what you do from the first meeting or when you first jump into the project, and that has to do with setting a vision, declaring your values and what's important to you and for the project, and aligning your vision and values with the rest of the people that you're dealing with downstream. And if you can align those values across all members of your team, you'll find that getting the work done is a lot easier.
Oh man, I love that. And it's so tough to get right, and it's so easy to get wrong. And I think it starts with, just like you said, just like stepping up and saying, hey, we're going to do this. Like, I have my vision and my values, and I'm either going to build a team around me that shares the same vision and values, or I'm going to work in a team that's already existing and see if I can influence or shape them in a way that we can all start working together on the same vision and values.
More importantly, once you have vision and values aligned across all members of your team, and you leave execution alone, it really leaves a lot of room for creativity for the people that are actually doing the work on the ground, on the front lines, to execute the work how they want. It gives them the ability to deal with emerging conditions that might pop up. It might be unmet customer demands, new services that the customer may not be aware of, problems that the customer may not be aware of. It enables you to figure them out on the ground, and by establishing a feedback loop with your employees out on the front lines, back up to the leadership team, you're able to take that new information, those new things new ideas that are being developed, and pump that out to the rest of the team so it benefits the entire group of people. It's really about integration of ideas across integration of ideas and information across large groups of people.
I love
it's very
this.
exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this idea of what we've talked about it on the show many times, and I call it servant leadership. This notion that the leaders are here to serve the employees or serve the individual contributors, serve the people that are actually doing the work. And I love what you said about, it's the leader's job to set that vision and then leave the execution alone, right? Step back and say, okay, now you folks are smart people. You know what the goal is. You know what the vision is. You all have the same values as we do, the leadership and the clients or whoever we're working for. Now go forth and execute. So Scott, in just a minute, I want to ask you about a lot more detail on that, because I really, really resonate with what you're saying there. But first, today is Leadership Wednesday on Hello Tech Pros, and we are already talking about great leaders and what makes them great. But first, I want to take a step back and focus on maybe an attribute or two that does not exemplify a great leader. And one thing that we like to do here on the show is talk about a horrible boss. Now, we don't want to name names, and we don't want to throw people under the bus. We don't want to get specific instances where we're going to make people mad. But maybe, Scott, you could tell us about a time in your past, in your history, where you experienced a horrible boss, regardless of where you were in life and time. And really, we want to know, what were the attributes that this person was displaying, and what was the effect on the team? What was the effect on you, so that we can learn some lessons from that and maybe do things a little better?
Absolutely, Chad. I've had a number of bosses and different shades of bosses, of effective bosses. And years ago, I had one in particular that I was right out of school and working, and just could not understand why this one person that I was working for could not accept responsibility. A task or an assignment would come down, and he was always looking to deflect questions, criticism, concern. He never took ownership of the task that he was assigned. And it really made a mark on me, because it's like, God, why does this person keep they're in a leadership position? Why do they keep passing things through the rest of the team? It was very hard to pin them down on what. Here I was looking to my boss for guidance. I was green, brand new in the organization, looking for guidance on how to proceed, and I never really saw my boss take a stand. And that really made a mark on me. And I think it was at that point in particular that I really became fascinated with the idea that, or with leadership in particular, and that, wow, that's not the way to do things. And kind of building upon that, with not accepting responsibility, that also meant that he was not supporting his people, because things would get passed down. You would take an action on the assignment, you would make a mistake, and you might make a mistake because you're learning as well. Well, by him not accepting responsibility, what that meant is that he was not taking responsibility for any actions that I might take. He says, well, that's Scott's fault. He did that. It's like, wow, that's one way to put it is that he provided no top cover. And when you're out of school and learning, and people are looking at you because you made a mistake, and pointing fingers at you, that's not a way to build morale. So it builds. So starting off, you have someone that can't accept responsibility. That's going to translate down the road to him not supporting his people, and leaving you out to dry if something goes wrong. And it just struck me, looking back, that I think this guy in particular he took the path of least resistance on everything. It was amazing. And kind of looking back, he was a great guy, but I think it was just one of these things where I don't think he was ever happy with where he was in his career, which I think he always wanted to be someplace else. And he was just kind of promoted up over time, and the people that were leading the firm thought he might be a good fit for this job, and deep down, maybe it wasn't, and he never spoke up. So as a result, he was in a position where he didn't really care to be in, and the entire team suffered. The organization suffered because we lost contracts and work based on the poor quality of the relationships that he had with everyone around him. And it started with just very basically him not accepting responsibility for his position.
Well, we've heard stories on the show in the past about leaders who deflected responsibility, didn't take ownership, passed the buck, but they were very, very heavy-handed in doling out like fear and intimidation to their staff. From the tone of your voice, I didn't pick that up, that this individual was just trying to really make people feel like crap. He was just not providing top cover and not defending them and not coaching them on maybe the right way or the wrong ways to do things.
Yeah, he was less of a lion and more of a jellyfish.
Oh, interesting.
It was really a crazy situation, and it was unbelievable. I have had people that have been heavy-handed, and they tended to be people that are barking out directions and whatnot. They take the idea of being a leader with gusto, and they believe that barking is the right way to get things done. And I think that worked in a period of time, in a certain period in our it's American organizational history, but it's nowadays that kind of thing doesn't fly. Information is moving too quickly. Very often, the people that are on the front lines know more than the bosses.
Oh yeah.
And as a leader, or more importantly, as someone leading, as someone that's responsible for taking action, you've got to be open. Yes, I do believe there's a time and a place for barking and taking a heavy hand, particularly when lives may be at stake, or if there's an important business decision that's on the line, or if there's an emergency. But very generally, if that heavy-handedness is framed by or supported by openness and openness to new ideas, then that's okay. But if it's not, then I think the organization will have problems down the road, because they've demonstrated that they're just simply not open to change. And that's really what it's all about, is being open to change.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that is not my natural style, right? That heavy-handedness, that barking orders. I can do it, and I have done it in emergency situations, right? The fire alarm's going off. Everyone get up, get away from your desk, and go downstairs right now. Like, I don't care who you are. I don't care if, what position you have. My job is to make sure that everybody gets out of this building safely. And if I have to pull you by your ear, we're going out together, right? So get moving. But, I would also admit that in the past, especially as a new leader first moving into a leadership position, I probably was a lot more like a jellyfish, because I didn't have a firm foundation of confidence, and I didn't have honestly, I didn't have a strong desire to move into a leadership position. I was coached and mentored, and hey, Chad, you can do this. You're a natural. You just got to have more confidence and do this and move into leadership. But it took me a couple of years before I really found my footing. So there was probably a couple of year period where, I wasn't purposefully trying to leave my team out to dry. I just, was insecure and about saying, okay, these are the way things are, and I screwed up in not communicating to my team. And so I'd just be like, I don't know what's going on. I can go find out. So what did you learn from this jellyfish like leader, that maybe we can all take a lesson learned from this going forward?
Well, you've got to connect with your people. And that's again, looking back, I feel bad for the guy now, but I think he was just in a tough position personally. Didn't want to be there, and it reflected in his leadership style. But what I've learned is that you've got to connect with your people. The teams that I lead now, it really starts with from the first moment you meet them from the showing up on time, what you look like, being professional. The making it very clear to the people involved in the work what the expectations are. Hey, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is why we're doing this. This is why this this project, this consulting effort is important. It's going to solve this problem for the clients. And hey, while you're out there doing the work, if you uncover something, give me a call. You can. Yes, there are people in between me and you, but don't hesitate to give me a call, shoot me an email, text me, let me know about some emergent problem so that we can address it and make some changes to how we're approaching our clients' problems. And when you empower people to move forward in that fashion and get creative with, give them the space to be creative with how they solve problems, you'll find that you'll start winning followers. That's not what it's about for me, but that's the byproduct of stepping in and setting a clear vision and expectations for the people that you're working with.
So, Scott, at the top of the show, we talked pretty briefly about this idea of architecture, and architecture is a system of people, places, and things, and it's not just like a building, right? It's not just the plumbing and HVAC, nor is it on the IT side just the network and the software, but it's really a collection of all of these things. So how does leadership and architecture kind of go together when you're especially when you're thinking about building teams of people that are diverse, come from different industries, come from different backgrounds, come from different experience and education, and kind of molding that group of diverse individuals into a team of people who are going to solve problems and get things done?
Right. When you have a peak performing team or a high performing team, I think your ideal outcome is that the members of your team are able to anticipate outcomes where they are so connected to all aspects of the organization that they're working with, and it can be IT projects, real architecture projects, any kind of business problem that as a consultant, we want to be so connected as a team and also connected to our customer to the point where we're starting to anticipate what the customer needs. We're staying ahead of emerging problems. We can see the problems before they develop because we can, because of our knowledge of the organization and the system that we're working with, you'll start to see warning signs or symptoms and know down the road, wow, I see some warning signs here. I know that that's going to be a problem down the road. And you can point those things out to the people in charge, and they'll know, hey, I'm starting to see some warning signs, and we need to take action accordingly. That's not unlike how you might treat yourself if you're getting sick. If you notice that you have a cough coming on or a sore throat, you might quickly realize, I need to take it easy, take a night off, take a day off, drink more water, cut out some junk food, or maybe exercise more, and you start treating the symptoms before the actual problems develop. And as far as so it's kind of like you're playing doctor with the organizations, in the sense that you get to know them so well that you're able to anticipate what might be happening.
Yeah, I think that getting in the mindset of the customer is so important, and I've seen it not done very well in a lot of different areas, both in IT and in other other forms of business where you're thinking about the bottom line that you want to have impact. Okay, we're thinking about how much money, how much revenue we want to make, or how much G&A cost savings we want to create. But we're not really thinking about the customer and what they're thinking about and the problems that are in their head. And when we can do that, when we can step away from thinking about our own problems and our own solutions and all the things that are going on in our world, and really put ourselves like square in the boots and the shoes of the customer, and try to just walk around for a little bit looking at the world from their perspective, then I think it changes the whole way that you start to work, right? And if you can get the individuals on the team to start thinking that way too, then they're going to come to you instead of just with, okay, this client is being a problem, then right. They're going to come to you with, hey, this client has a problem, and here's some ideas on how to solve it.
Right. The people that I work with, and particularly the junior people right out of school, I let them know that as one of my favorite leaders that I worked for at one point said, he approached his job, his work, as the art of the possible. He said, I said, hey, what do you do? I asked him at one point, casually after a meeting, and he says, well, my job is the art of the possible. Like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I try to figure out, I don't take no for an answer, and I try to figure out how to make things happen. It's like, really? And a couple other things that he told me were that I said, mistakes are not a problem. And as long as you're making an effort on your projects, and as long as you will accept responsibility for them, it's not a problem that you're making mistakes. What that does is, and I've since started telling the people who work for me the same kind of thing, it's not a problem to go out there and make mistakes in the eyes of your client, because when they understand that you've got their best interests at heart, mistakes are not a problem, because they know that you're going to take responsibility for it, make an effort not to repeat it, and they know that you're experimenting with how to best achieve some end for them. It's art of the possible. That's something that I kind of a mantra of mine that I take from project to project. I'm always trying to figure out how can we make things happen, and it's tough sometimes. But if getting people to on the front lines, the people that are in the trenches doing the work, if they know that that's your attitude or approach with the job, they'll bend over backwards to make things happen, and that's important to me.
That's such a great philosophy to bring to work and really try to inspire other people about, because I think so many times we're kind of boxed into these notions. They say, oh, think outside the box, but we're boxed into these notions that the job is XYZ, right? It has these parameters. I'm only allowed to say these things. I'm only allowed to speak when spoken to, right? I'm only allowed to design a product within these parameters. And when you really bring in, okay, just forget the cliche, but really think outside the box. Think about the art of possible. What if, right, in an imaginary world, if I had a magic wand and could wave it and anything possibly could happen, what would that be? And when you can really convince people that you want that and expect that, and then you start getting that creative juices flowing and people start feeding off of each other's ideas, really, really amazing things can happen.
Yeah, it is. And it goes back to, I think what really throws a lot of people off in vertical organizations, or in an organization where you have a leader that maybe heavy-handed or scared of change. A lot of times, the crazy ideas will come out of will come up within organizations as you're trying to develop solutions to problems. And I've had leaders that have said, Scott, that's beyond the scope of what we're doing. And hey, it's okay. We're just talking about it. We're well aware that a lot of these ideas have nothing to do with our current client. But you know what? We're going to write them down. We're going to type up a report, make a list of these things, and we'll put it in our file. And maybe there's some other client or some other problem that will pop up in the future, and we can at least document that we've talked about it. And I've typically found is that these ideas that we'll write down that might be perceived as crazy, these leaders will come back to us and say, Scott, maybe it might be 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. It's like, that idea that we had back then that I thought wrote off as crazy now makes perfect sense. And let's pull it off the shelf and see if we can do something with it. But as long as you're giving the people as a leader, giving people the space to create, document what they're doing, and understand that, this is my vision for the organization. These are the values. That might be integrity, trustworthiness, or other things. Mm-hmm. This is what we're trying to achieve. All of the crazy ideas that pop up, or oddball ideas that might pop up out of some sort of a customer research, it's okay. It's okay for oddball ideas to pop up. They may not come to the rally, but you know what? We might find a golden nugget in in there that we can develop and turn into some new positive solution or direction for our customers. But it's about being open to that and knowing that these ideas, it's okay for people to express themselves because we believe in the vision and values of our organization. That's our rock and foundation. So it's okay to go off on tangents because we can always come back to where we started, which is our ultimate vision for what we're up to.
So Scott, when we're a leader of an established team and we've been together for a long time, everybody has already gelled on this mission and values, but many times as leaders, we're put in positions where we are new to the team or the team is new to us or both, right? And so
Yes.
We're in these positions where there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of understanding that has to go into, there's a lot of pre-work that has to happen, a lot of leadership that has to happen before we can actually execute on the plan and get things done. So I'm going to ask you about that in just a moment, about how we can specifically gel this team together and get everybody aligned on the mission and the values. But first, we're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors.
This episode of Hello Tech Pros is sponsored by Minio Cloud Storage. Minio is a cloud object storage server for developers and DevOps written in Go. The Go programming language is the emerging language of choice for modern cloud infrastructure projects, and it allows Minio to be highly concurrent and lightweight. Minio is Amazon S3 compatible, built with microStorage architecture in mind, but at its heart, Minio is simple, scalable, and supported by a passionate developer and user community. In episode 89 of Hello Tech Pros, I talked with A.B. Periasamy, one of the founders of Minio, about the importance of community support and recruiting software developers who are as passionate about their product's code as artists are of their art. Check out that episode at hellotechpros.com/89 and check out Minio Cloud Storage at minio.io. That's minio.io.
Okay, we're back with Scott Jancy. Scott is a historian, architect, prior naval officer, and most recently a consultant working globally on small and large-scale infrastructure development projects. And we've been talking to Scott about how leaders can pull teams together, and that we really have to be aligned on the mission and the values, and we all have to kind of have the same headspace, right? Before we start executing, before we start building whatever it is that we're going to be building or solving the problems that we're going to solve, we have to get into the mind of the customer and understand what the customer really, really wants, and we have to all have the same values and be aligned to that same mission. But Scott, as either new leaders coming into a situation that's already developed, or bringing a bunch of people from diverse walks of life together that haven't worked on this particular problem before, what are the specific tactical steps that we can do to achieve that goal, to get everyone aligned on a common mission and values?
Well, Chad, it starts with just simply being receptive. I stepped into multiple customer engagements and certainly new jobs and positions and things, and the best advice I can give to new employees that come to work with me is that you just got to listen. A lot of people we've got a lot of smart people around us and a lot of smart customers, and we all have ideas about how things should be, but the best way to proceed with any new organization is to simply listen. What you'll find out over time is you'll start to notice how people talk, how people refer to each other, how they talk about their work. Any structural deficiencies, will very quickly become apparent. Once you've identified those, you can better figure out where exactly, as a consultant or an advisor, figure out how to insert yourself within an existing organization or process to affect the most change. The alternative is to step in, start projecting yourself and barking out the orders. And the risk there is that you, without fully knowing your customer or knowing what their issues are, you may be presenting them something that really may not apply to them. The customer may realize, wow, this guy has come in and he's telling me all these things, but that's not my real problem. That's the risk. When I was in the Navy, your typical tour is someplace is 2 years long, 2 or 3 years long. My first commanding officer said to me, he said, Scott, the best way to proceed here, this is your first job. He said that for the first 7 or 8 months that you're here, simply listen. Go to meetings, get your work done, brief me on things that are happening, but you generally want to be very receptive. During that middle third of your tour, the next 7 or 8 months, start taking action. Once you've figured out what the lay of the land is and what people are up to and the kind of projects that are going on, that's when you can really start implementing change. That's when you'll be able to make the biggest impact. The last third of your tour, the next 7 or 8 months, spend that time wrapping things up and preparing to move on to your next job. As you start working with whoever your replacement's going to be, you can let them know about the progress and set them up for success. I've been in positions where I've stepped into new organizations and it's required immediate action. I've put out a fire, but then I've retreated into the background to watch the impact, to watch and see how people respond to those things, and then custom tailor my approach to that customer accordingly. I think very generally, people don't like change.
Right.
People don't like change. It can be shocking. It can be jarring. There is a time for decisive leadership, but a lot of people are aware of the problems and sometimes are aware of what they think needs to happen. But when you start to see the underlying issues, and they're very often related to workflow, work processes, and how people communicate, if you can really start to see what's happening below the surface, you'll be more effective. And the only way to really do that is to step in and actively listen to what's going on.
Yeah, I love what you said there about actively listen, because there can be the misperception that some folks might have of, okay, my job is just to listen for the first 7-8 months. That means I show up to meetings, I take some notes, and I literally do nothing. But when I hear active listening, what I think of is asking questions and being proactive and saying, why are we doing it this way? Oh, that's interesting.
You're absolutely right, Chad. And it's gentle probing. Chad, why do you do your podcast this way? Why not that way? Chad, have you thought about this? Oh, I see. Oh, you've tried these other things before. Okay. Oh, now I understand why you're doing it. Okay, great. Yeah, take that information and I go back to you, and I liken my role with a customer as kind of a sparring partner, as a way to I'm there to help a leader, help a customer test their own ideas. I'm not projecting my will on them, but rather helping bring out the best in them, helping them solve their own problems. And if you can get a leader and an organization to solve their own problems, your chances of success in a consulting engagement are, I think, much higher. Because typically, when working with any kind of customer, some sort of solution that comes from outside of an organization is overlaid on top of a company or an organization or something. It's less likely to succeed because people don't believe in it. But if the idea is generated from within and everyone in the organization is involved in the decision-making process and they understand why we're doing this, it's more apt to succeed in the long term. And that's the important thing for me, that that long-term change is created and that the customer feels that they've received some sort of value for with me being involved.
Awesome. Great stuff. Scott, we're just about out of time. So before we go, could you share some parting words of wisdom for our audience, the best way that we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye?
Absolutely. I strongly believe that the world is in need of a new kind of creative, inclusive leadership, where leaders are taking the interests of not only the employees at every level, but also the needs of the customer in, so that you can create dynamic solutions to emerging scenarios. It's you've got to be connected to the people that you're serving. And achieving any kind of long-term change really requires patience and discipline. It's not easy to do that. People are restless with the amount of information that people are exposed to these days. It requires patience and discipline to filter out the signal from the noise. And if you can get at what the signal is, what the real problems are, then you'll be well on your way to achieving long-lasting change, not only personally, but also within organizations. One of my, very quickly, favorite books, and something that really made an impact on me, is a book called Leadership by Design by Ambassador Richard Sweat. He's actually a registered architect, the first architect that served in Congress, and I think under President Bill Clinton, he became the ambassador to Denmark. He wrote a book after he left the ambassador position, and a couple things in here that really stuck with me over time that I still use today when I'm talking with people, and that's how you create change. One, you create order out of chaos. Two, you've got to step up to the plate and take the initiative and bear responsibility. Number three, you've got to create trust between all members of your organization and with the customers you're serving. And once you understand that, fourth, you can start to create new value. And that's what's important to me. However, all those things require time and patience to get there. Chad, if people want to reach out to me, the best way to do it would be through my blog and also on Twitter. And I love connecting with people that want to talk, and happy to start conversations with people that are interested in what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. I really value your leadership and you're aligning us on this mission and value of you know what, we need to be creative, we need to be flexible, we need to be open, we need to be diverse, and we need to just create an environment where we just let the people run and let them solve these problems with top cover, right? Covering them, making sure that they're okay, making sure that they have all the support that they need, but just really letting the people execute on the plan. So I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing that with us today.
Thank you for having me, Chad. This was a lot of fun.
You bet. Tech Pros, man, if you're a new leader, don't be a jellyfish. If you're an old leader or a new leader, don't be that barking leader that's just going to jump in people's face, jump down their throat at the same time. Create this environment, strive to create this environment where people are aligned on the same values, where they're aligned on the same mission, and really, really, really understand what the customer's needs are. That's the number one goal, is understand what the customer's needs are and make sure that people are aligned to those problems and that customer's mission and what their goals are. You've been listening to Scott Jancy, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care.
The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/129. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Leadership Wednesday, but tomorrow my featured guest and I talk about technology. On Friday, people in communication. Saturday, entrepreneurship. Sunday, being unplugged. And then next week, we kick it off with Motivation Monday, followed by Tuesday, productivity. And then we're back again on Wednesday to discuss leadership. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.